Welcome to our time with Dr. Richards. This is something we're going to do over the next few months where we're going to talk about his different periods of time in his ministry. And we're going to start with Dr. Richards' early years of ministry. So, which is always great to hear how someone began in ministry and know because we know where you are in ministry now, but where did you begin? So let's start, Dr. Richards, with this question. When did you first sense a call to ministry, and what are some of the experiences, or who were some of the people that contributed to your sense of call?
Well, back in the dark ages when dinosaurs roamed the earth, it was in the late 1970s, and I had been participating in a wonderful little rural church, and it was just a wonderful place. I didn't know it at the time, but it survived on having seminary students as the pastor. So every 3 years or so they'd get a new pastor, but they were filled with enthusiasm and zeal, and whatever lack of ability they had, we didn't really notice. And under his ministry, I felt a call to to do ministry. And of course, all I knew was preaching. So, I announced I had a call to preach. That little sweet church licensed me. I think it was about 1978 or something. They gave me a chance to preach, which I did an absolutely terrible job at. In fact, John, I used to tell students that no matter how bad their first sermon went, it couldn't have been as bad as mine. And they think, oh yeah, yeah. I said, no, no, I'm preaching in this little church, and I'm just holding on to the pulpit, like this, and I'm just talking, and then I suddenly realized I I need to have a gesture or something. So then I go, and therefore, like this. And I was holding my little Bible, in my hand. And when I said, therefore, I hit the edge of the pulpit, and the little Bible goes right down over the pulpit into the floor. And so my first thought was, well, maybe no one noticed. I'm just going to leave it. And then I go a little further and I thought, well, I can't leave it. I haven't read the passage yet. So then I had to walk out and go down onto the floor of the church and pick up my Bible and go back. So, and and then the students realized he wasn't just kidding when he said that his first sermon was worse than ours. Uh, but that church loved me and took care of me. The pastor would take me out sometimes to do visitation. And often when we got back in the car, he would say, well, maybe next time it might be better if you didn't say. So, but from there, I went to college locally, and I got involved in campus ministry. And that's when I really started to have some opportunities to lead. And so I decided I wasn't called to preach, I was called to do campus ministry. And I went to seminary. And John, this will appall you probably. This was back when seminaries were booming. So I decided the last minute to go to seminary. So I'm in line at registration. And for orientation, the president of the seminary preached and cried, and we all felt called to ministry, which I mean, we were already there called to ministry. So we're there, and then we just get in line. So I'm in line, and the guy in front of me turns around. We're just chatting while we're waiting in line. He said, so what degree are you getting? I said, seminary. He said, well, seminary has several degrees. I said, really? He said, yeah, like music. I said, oh, I'm not doing music. He said, but then there's the education degree and the divinity degree. I said, oh, I don't know. I want to do campus ministry. He said, well, you should do education. You know, all right. And so I'm in line. So suddenly I'm now a religious education major. And then the guy behind me taps me on the shoulder. He was an angel, I think. Tapped me on the shoulder, and I looked back at him, and he whispered, don't do that. Do divinity. I thought, okay. And so then I was back to doing a divinity. And so that's the clear guidance that I got, John. And it's a good reminder to students the Holy Spirit will take care of it. And they don't need to worry quite as much. I mean, they should plan better than I did. But even if they don't plan better than I did, the Holy Spirit will take care of it.
Yeah, that's great. Oh, thank you. Calling is one of those things, right, where it unfolds. You don't know what's next, and you just kind of take a step forward and see where God opens the door next. So,
So, John, when I finished my master's degree, I was working on my master's degree. I was doing campus ministry. So I was a director of a campus ministry, about 14,000 students on campus. I was the one guy doing campus ministry. I joke that my office was the trunk of my car. And, uh, and so while I was doing campus ministry, I noticed teaching the Bible studies was one of my favorite parts. And the same time I'm in seminary, a few profs talked to me about maybe I ought to consider doing doctoral work. And so my focus in ministry began to shift again toward teaching uh, the Bible.
wow. So you move from kind of preaching to campus ministry to a teaching ministry,
Right.
as was just in those few years, really,
Right.
of college and
And
seminary.
and then it shifted from teaching ministry. It stayed teaching, but then it was like teaching on the mission field.
Yeah.
Because I'd heard someone preach and they said, we've got lots of teachers here in the US. We don't have any abroad. And you should go abroad. Unless the Lord tells you otherwise. And I thought, I don't know if the Lord's telling me otherwise. And so during that time, I met Stacia, and we got married, and she also was interested in serving abroad.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, the next time we talk, we're going to talk about your experience as a missionary, and we'll want to hear a little bit more of that. How did you move from, teaching to teaching the Bible overseas? What was that process like? And then your experience abroad. So, but I want to ask the next question really is, what are some of the lessons you learned in those early years that helped you throughout your ministry, the life of your ministry?
Okay. John, let me start by asking you a question.
Okay.
When you were first called to ministry, did you think, oh, I'm going to be the dean of a school of ministry?
No, not at all. I thought I was going to be a youth pastor for pretty much the rest of my life.
Huh. And I think if you'd asked me, I would have said, I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So it's possible we had some students right now who are going to end up serving in ministries that we've never even heard of. Maybe they don't even exist yet. So I think we need to feel confidence that the Lord will take us from where we are to where he wants to lead us. Two lessons I want to talk about that I learned. One was the Lord will guide us in anyway. And I'd like to think I planned and calculated, strategized more than I did. I sometimes say I just sort of backed into everything I was doing.
Hmm.
And yet the Lord was faithful and got
Mhm.
me where he wanted me to go. Now I've seen other people strategize and plan and think about what they want to do. And the Lord gets them to where he wants them to go. So one of the lessons in that is worry less.
Mm.
I did study and prepare, and I worked hard during my preparation time. But um, one of the things I've learned, John, is every time I've entered a ministry, I thought, okay, I'm going to do this the rest of my life. I'm going to retire doing this. And I'm going to retire right here where I am,
Mhm.
wherever that was. And until I got to PBA, I was wrong every single time. The Lord moved me again, and I fell in love with that new place. So I think worrying less about where
Yeah.
and exactly what, and just trust that the Lord will take care of us. One of the ways the Lord helped me a lot were mentors who gave me phrases that I could latch onto and remember and use. I remember early on a mentor saying, until you're ready to go anywhere, you're not ready to go anywhere.
Mm. That's good.
Yeah, and it was just clever, and the fact that it was clever made it really stick with me.
Mhm.
Um, when we say I'll go anywhere the Lord calls me in Southeast Florida, that's not really willing to go anywhere.
Yeah.
you know. Um, so I think I had a mentor in seminary, and he kind of had a reputation as not the sharpest, not the keenest professor, not the hardest one. And so early on, my colleagues would say, "Oh, don't take anything with him. Take these other guys who are really difficult." Well, I ended up taking whatever fit into my schedule, but it ended up being a lot of this guy. And this guy had so much wisdom, and
Mm.
so many of the phrases that my students have caught over the years, I got from him. And I think that is wisdom. Uh, Proverbs are just folk wisdom, you know,
Yeah.
cultural wisdom. And God in his providence said, this particular culture is the wisdom we're going to put in the book of Proverbs and help people all along. But there's other kinds of cultural wisdom, and there's also ministerial wisdom, and
Yeah.
that's passed down from minister to minister. And I would say finding great mentors who will invest in you, and those little pithy sayings that you think, oh yeah, that those are proverbs for a minister.
Great advice, and I really appreciate you sharing. We look forward to next time we get together when we look at your missionary years. I feel like we're talking like Paul, and you being a Paul expert, it's like Paul the early years. We're talking Dr. Richards the early years, Dr. Richards the missionary years, and we'll be looking at different parts of your life and ministry. And we're so thankful that you're sharing that with us. You, it's appropriate for us to talk about the early years when we're talking about just students that are coming to PBA as freshmen, and they have that similar like desire. They have this call. They don't know what it looks like. They might think it's youth ministry or this ministry or that ministry because that's all they've experienced, and they want to come to PBA. But as we've shared in other videos, one of the biggest challenges is finances, is just helping them get here financially. And we're so thankful that in honor of your ministry, we have started the Timotheus Scholarship Fund. And those that are watching this, we want to encourage you to consider participating in this scholarship fund for freshmen coming into the School of Ministry, majoring in one of our different disciplines. We would love you to participate. So there'll be an opportunity for you, a link below that you can take advantage of to give. So, Dr. Richards, thank you for this time, and we look forward
Sure.
to hearing from you again.